Hi, my name is Camila Valencia, and today I'm going to explain to you how tennis is related with physics. First, why did I choose this sport? I have played it since I was 8 years old. It's my favorite sport and I think it's interesting. Before we start, I'm going to tell you a little bit of his history. So, the sport was invented in the 11th century in France with the name of Jeu de Paume, which means palm game, because at that time rackets didn't exist. At first, it was practiced with hands until the 16th century, that rackets were invented with the actual scoring of 15, 30, 40 and point. The name tennis comes from the word tenez in sense of here it comes in French and was changed by English people. In addition, the surface was of grass till the end of the 19th century when it was introduced the ones of clay, then hardwood, fluorine, and much later the hard courts with concrete or acrylic surface. Women's participation in competition were seen since Wimbledon in 1884. Now the best players. Nowadays, the most important players in the men category are Roger Federer from Switzerland, Rafael Nadal from Spain, and Novak Djokovic from Serbia. In the category women are found Serena Williams from the USA, Maria Sharapova from Russia, and Venus Williams, the sister of Serena. Finally, in Peru, we can find Juan Pablo Varillas, a young boy that is now playing around the world. So now the question, what do I have to do to be a better player? To know this, we have to look at all the topics that are required to be a good player. The first one is alimentation. So, for the tennis players, carbohydrates are essential. With a training of 1 hour or 1 hour and 30 minutes, they are required to eat 5 to 7 grams per kilogram of his weight of carbohydrates. With a training of 2 hours to 4 hours, they are required to eat 7 to 10 grams per kilogram of his weight, and the common source of these are bread, rice, potato, or oats. In proteins, they should eat from 1,2 to 1,4 grams per kilogram of his weight, and in lipids, it should represent from 20 to 30% of his daily food. To transform calories into joules, you just have to know that 1 calorie is equal to 4.184 joules. Now the exercises. It actually depends of every person, but here is an example of the routine of Serena Williams. As we can see, it starts with cardio and then abs, legs, and finally with physical endurance. Okay, it's time to start with all the topics that are related with physics. Let's start with the ball. In the game, we can see that this element is very important because it's the one that is moving from one part to another. Here are applied the 3 laws of Newton. The first one says, any object will remain at rest in a straight line unless something changes its state by the action of an external force. The second law says if a force is applied to an object, then this accelerates. And the third one says for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So these 3 laws are seen when the ball moves from one part to another and when it's in the ground and then the player applies some force just to move it. The second thing that we can find with the ball is elasticity, which is the deformation when the ball hits the ground and the racket. Also, there are 2 ways that the player can hit the ball. The first one is the linear momentum, which is hitting in a straight line by shifting the weight from the back foot to the front foot. To calculate the linear momentum, we have to multiply the mass of the ball with the velocity of the ball and sum it with the mass of the racket multiplied with the velocity of the racket. And this is equal to the mass of the ball multiplied by velocity of the ball after collision plus the mass of the racket multiplied by the velocity of the racket after collision. The units that are used in this operation are kilograms per mass divided by seconds. The second and most common is angular momentum, and is found when you hit the ball by shifting their weight using a rotational movement. To calculate it, you have to multiply the mass with the velocity and the radius. Now the movements. Here we can find 2 types, the top spin and the back spin. In the top spin, we can observe the Magnus effect, which is how a circular object changes the movement of the air by making one side with more velocity and the other one with less. In consequence, the ball gets down in a lesser time. In the backspin, it requires half of the racket speed because the player is not required to change the direction of the ball. That's why the ball gets down later and farther. With a player, we can find three topics: the velocity, the friction, and the kinetic energy. The velocity is seen when the player runs. We can find a direction, a distance, and a time of displacement. The equation for this is distance divided by time. Friction is present when the velocity can be interfered because of the surface where the player is. And kinetic energy is the energy of motion, found when the player is running. The unit is joules. The equation to calculate it is 0.5 multiplied by the mass and the velocity squared. Another element is the racket. When the ball collides with a tennis racket, the racket bends outward, storing potential energy in the strings, and then when the strings bend back, the potential energy becomes kinetic energy. His equation is mass multiplied by grams and height. Another point is momentum. It is the force which allows rotation in specific objects. It is present in the arm with the racket. His equation is force multiplied by distance. Finally, the surfaces. The ground of clay, which produces lower play because of the higher and slower bounces, and produce more physical wear for players. The ground of synthetic grass makes a faster game and faster and shorter bounces. Lastly, the ground of cement, which is the fastest ground, and the time of reaction is reduced. In conclusion, to be a good player, we should have a good alimentation to have energy and burn it in a workout, have a good workout routine to have a better physical strength in game,